Is above the vast horizon, the people of this prairie community begin their day. Students get ready for school. Farmers do their chores. Commuters start their cars for the drive into the city. This is Pense, population 534. The village has thrived for a century on the southern Saskatchewan prairie. It has celebrated success and endured hardship. It has evolved with time. In an age of prairie ghost towns, Pense has survived. This is the story of a village born 100 years ago. The story began in 1882 when a party of dignitaries from down east visited a site that the CPR line had yet to reach. There was nothing to see but prairie. They placed ties and rails on the grade, and the ladies hammered in the spikes. With a pouring of champagne on the ground, the village of Pense was conceived, named after the editor of the Kingston Whig. The first phase of settlement was in the 1880s and 1890s, when settlers arrived from Manitoba and Ontario by oxen and wagon. Some came from as far away as Europe. These settlers pitched their tents on the open prairie and eventually established the first homesteads of the Pense community.
For the most part, there's still families here that have been here. Their generations go back right to the incorporation.
My dad came out 100 years ago this year.
The second wave of settlers arrived around 1900 on the Canadian Pacific Railway. They were able to bring goods by train, launching a boom of viable businesses and farms.
Back in those days, virtually everybody in town were farming families and the few families that ran businesses in town.
The expanse of prairie promised great crops, and early settlers broke the land with teams of oxen. But they had to learn how to work it. It took them several years to realize they shouldn't bother with fall and spring plowing. By the turn of the century, the district proved to be some of the best grain-growing land in Western Canada. One season even saw a yield of 1 million bushels. By 1910, these farmers were still depending on horses. In fact, the Pense area was known for its fine animals. In addition to horses, farmers employed steam engines for threshing, which were manned by crews of 20 to 30 men. They would work from farm to farm to get harvest finished before Christmas. Pense grew to meet the demands of the surrounding farms, and the village was officially established in 1904. There were livery and feed stables, hotels, boarding houses, blacksmiths, and a grain elevator. Much of this first development is credited to the Spring Rice brothers, wealthy entrepreneurs who started businesses as they were needed. Dr. G.H. Ramsey was the first physician to open a practice in Pense. He also owned the drugstore that installed the area's first telephone in 1905. By 1915, there was a hardware store, town hall, post office, pool hall, and a newspaper called the Pense Herald. Anglicans and Presbyterians provided religious services, and other organizations were founded to meet the needs of the new community.
I belong to the Homemakers Club, and I joined in about the early 70s, but it had been formed here in Pense in 1911. A lot of people were very hungry the first winter, and these ladies got together, had teas and fundraising, and helped people through the winter. They felt that a lot of the ladies that had come from Ontario and maybe from Europe were fairly well educated, but they didn't know how to can.
As organizations grew in membership over the years, livery stables and blacksmith shops gave way to garages, filling stations, and machine shops. In 1924, the McCormick Deering 1530 tractor signaled the end of the horse as the main source of power on the prairies. Pense was evolving with a changing world.
We didn't exactly have running water then, but at least we had electricity. When Mom and Dad moved in there, the registers and everything were in the house, but there was no central heating. The heating, our first winter was 1949, and oh, it was cold. We had a kitchen stove, an old cook stove, and 2 space heaters in each room, and an assortment of pipes, stovepipes.
I remember a billiard hall and barber shop when I was young, and if you went in for a haircut, the proprietor would put a board across the barber's chair, and you'd sit up there and watch the old guys smoke and play pool and chat. It was quite nice. It was rustic compared to what it is now, but a nice place to grow up.
So we had a radio shop and TV shop sort of thing when television started.
I think it's 5 elevators. So it was kind of busy in that respect. There was 5 people running elevators, and most of them all sold coal. We had lumber yards, so we had quite a real assortment of businesses back then. Yeah.
Hardly anybody in those days would commute to Regina.
Soon, Pense was humming with groups like the Royal Legion, Ladies Auxiliary, Boy Scouts, the Golden Rule Lodge, Imperial Order Daughters of the Empire, and art and 4-H clubs. Pense was a socially active town, which was especially evident on the weekends.
On a Saturday night, there used to be Front Street be lined up with cars right from one end to the other. One Friday night, there would be a dance in the hall here, and then the next Friday night, there would be one bell playing. That went on practically all summer, you know, a dance every week.
I remember even as a child when Mom and Dad, Saturday night was their night to shop, and the store was open, and they would come in to buy their supplies.
It was a safe community, the kind where everyone knew each other.
I suppose you had to behave yourself because everybody knew you. As a kid, you got into trouble and everybody knew it, and it wasn't long till the old man knew about it, and then you wished you hadn't got into trouble.
The first years before I started school, it was mainly on the farm. We never got to town very often, so it really wasn't until I started school that I got familiar with the town and the people, and even the kids in town.
The first school was an old-fashioned boxcar style built around 1903. This was replaced by a larger brick building in 1911, which accommodated both village and farm kids throughout the years.
Well, I never really liked school. I was a farm kid, but anyway, I was always late in the fall going to school because I always stayed out working on harvest. So
that was a big deal to get out of school in harvest time to haul grain with a team and wagon. I did that when I was, 10 or 11, I guess.
On the farm, prairie weather conditions were a constant foe. In one case, no rain fell between April 1894 and May of 1895, resulting in no crop. The first relief work ever done in Western Canada was on the Pense Trail that year.
Even in the dirty 30s, they were raising money for the rural people who had no harvest and no income, and they were arranging for care packages, you might say, from Ontario, generous Ontario.
The years between 1929 to 1938 are considered to be the most significant drought years in Saskatchewan. 12,831 of the province's farms were abandoned in 1936 alone. Dust storms lasted for days.
I remember some ugly winters with lots and lots of snow and or dust. I can remember dust banks instead of snow banks. Dust that would come in on the windowsills. Mom used to hang curtains and sheets. At least she told us that in later years, that she would hang sheets, wet sheets over the windows when my mother and I were babies to try to keep the dust from the room.
When not facing drought, Pense area farmers contended with surprising weather phenomena.
Well, we had was it in about 42, I believe it was a bad hailstorm.
Yeah, I remember that as a kid. I'd be 9 years old then. And cows had lumps on their back from the hailstorms. Took all the windows out of the house and so on, and that was devastating because you didn't have the money to buy them windows again and so on.
It was mid-August one time, and I used to tie the cow out by the slough. There's lots of grass to eat, and this morning I figured I'm going to be in the yard, and it was thundering a little bit in the west, and I thought, well, I'll get her in when it gets closer. So I had milked her, and I went and I just tethered her out by the slough, and I walked away. It was just a matter of seconds, or a little over 100 feet, and it was just a swish and a bang, and I turned around. Here was the cow laying dead. The lightning had hit her.
Even without dust, hail, and lightning storms, Pense still had to deal with normal prairie temperatures. Winter weather could consistently dip into the -30s or 40s.
Well, we come back and forth to school in the wintertime through lots of blizzards. Usually, you jumped in the horse and cutter, and if you couldn't see where you were going, the horse took you home, so.
Winter could bring the town to a complete halt.
CN line north of here, it was blocked for about a month and a half, I guess. The snow was up, trains couldn't get through to all.
These trains were essential to the area.
You set your watch by them trains, you know. Oh, it's 20 to 12. There's the 20 to 12 train, eh? And when the train went back to Moose Jaw, it was 1 o'clock, you know, and 3 o'clock it went back to Regina.
At one time, Pense had 5 grain elevators that handled millions of bushels of grain, which were loaded onto the trains in the CPR depot and yards. There were many station agents over the years, each carrying heavy responsibilities.
All the freight for the stores and everything came from on the train to here. And even our drinking water was brought by the train. Yeah, there was a cistern on the east side of the station, and they brought drinking water because there's, of course, no water here. And all the mail, of course, came that way. And, yeah, bags and bags of mail every day, yeah, and the milk and all that came, yeah.
Winters were tough on early trains because they were prone to freezing up. Before there was a double track, this would cause problematic traffic jams. The town also witnessed tragedies on this rail line.
June and I just come back from our honeymoon when the train accident happened. That was 1956, February 1956. And 2 locomotives collided head-on, steam locomotives. And I believe there was an engineer killed. And there was a fellow from Moose Jaw, a young fellow that lived in Regina, and he was dead heading back, and he was killed in it too. You know, it's tragic, really.
Sad times included both World Wars. The Pense area would lose more of its residents, including Gerald Spring Rice and Oswald Weaver in the First World War, and Albert Gibson and Melvin Morrison in the Second. Many Pense men and women served in the efforts.
I would be 1940, I'd be 10 years old. Well, I could remember the different people from the men from here and my cousins and relatives that had joined the services. I remember the planes training. They from Regina, they trained over the farm quite a bit. Used to watch the planes flying and doing loops and whatever.
The community of Pense did what it could through organizations like the Homemakers Club.
They did a lot of work in the First and Second World War, knitting and that type of thing. And the last few years, they did a lot of, they had collected for the Red Cross. And of course, that was an offshoot from the war.
I remember the ration coupons and the gas ration. Tires were scarce for farm trucks.
With the end of the war came a revitalization of the community and a return to the farming that had sustained it since the turn of the century.
My brother got out of the Air Force and we bought, well, there was a section of land on the home place and we'd sow about 1,000 acres of crop every year with 2 9-foot one-ways and 2 Model D John Deere tractors. Pail all the seed into it. No cabs, nothing. I don't know how we ever got done, but we did. Now, one outfit sow more in a few hours than we do in a week, really.
We were just newly married, and I took over a farm to run north of Pense. That's where we were for 10 years. Our 2 children were raised there, and then we moved into town.
We got married in 1955. I worked 2 years in Regina after I was married. I never liked working in the city.
I liked it. It was a small town, and that's where I had come from. And I really liked it, and everybody was nice and friendly and accepted me, and it just felt like home. Our daughter weighed 2 pounds, 14 ounces when she was born, so she was in, we never got her home till she was 3.5 months old, and I had such support from this town, and I don't think I'll ever forget it, how good they were to us.
This community spirit proves itself strong in the face of shared adversity. Ice rinks were always important to the community. As early as 1903, residents made curling ice in the coulee and on farmland, using pickle pels filled with gravel and water for rocks. The first rink was built in 1906 and rebuilt in 1908 when it blew over. In December 1922, a new rink opened thanks to community fundraising.
They sold shares to build the first curling rink. They made their own entertainment. Most of those were done in the wintertime because most of the residents, they weren't working to death in the farm or in their gardens, etc. I suppose curling would be a cultural thing too. It certainly was, because it certainly took people, it got people together.
The old rink served the community until 1962, when it was finally condemned. Pense citizens volunteered their time and equipment to bring a new Quonset-style plan to life. It officially opened in 1963.
I was involved with the skating rink. There was 8 of us on the rink board, and we'd take a week apart looking after it.
We used to go down to the rink in the afternoons and skate with our kids when they were little, learning how to skate and that.
And I remember lugging my hockey equipment to school 2 or 3 days a week, and then after school going lugging it over to the rink for hockey practice, and the good times we had there around the stove in that old rink, and and learning from some really pretty accomplished coaches that we had in those days.
Generations of Pense residents and families from surrounding farms played hockey, curling, and practiced figure skating on that ice. But all of this came to a sudden end.
I always remember was the day the skate rink burnt down. And it was hot. I keep a diary, so I know the temperatures. It was 95 Fahrenheit or 35 Celsius that day, and a strong southeast wind.
The village of Pense has always been handicapped by its lack of groundwater supply, and has therefore been especially vulnerable to fire throughout the years.
I was out in the yard, bit of smoke coming. It wasn't long. The smoke really thickened up. So I took off on the run. Well, I could see it was the rink, and I got down as far as the little white house, kitty corner to the school. And the rink was just an inferno then. My son owned a little white house there then, and it was right in the direct line of the heavy wind, you know. And sparks and embers were coming on this house, so I better get the hose out and put the afternoon in there, which I did. I saved the house, and I had a shirt with a lot of aeration in after that. There was a lot of holes from the embers and things, just nicked little holes in it. That'll always stick in my mind then.
The rink could not be salvaged.
I thought, you know, the town's never going to be the same, and it wasn't for a whole year. It was just dead. 1 year without a rink.
It was traumatic. You know, I played pretty much all of my hockey and coached in there, and my kids played in there and figure skated, and it was an awful thing.
Rink events had always brought the community together. This tragedy would prove to do the same.
You have to have a rink, so it wasn't long after everything got going, and things to raise funds, you know, and that.
It amazes me in this community how it seems like from the very beginning, even before the community was incorporated, that there was a volunteerism and community spirit here that you know, maybe was quite common back 100 years or more ago.
I want to talk about a community effort. That would be it for a community of 500 people. Everybody pitched in, both in fundraising and donating, and well, we hauled gravel, we moved dirt, we laid bricks. We learned how to do all kinds of things we didn't know how to do before, but we got the thing built.
Unfortunately, no amount of volunteerism could fix the old school back in 1959. The school needed so many repairs and was so crowded that it was replaced by a new building. By 1967, all grade 9 to 12 students were bused to Regina. Pense was changing again.
In about the 1970s, the character started to change a bit, and farms got bigger, and it took less farm families to run them, and so those families drifted away or retired and moved off to Regina.
And I was hired as the kindergarten teacher then, so I've been here 26 years.
The school remains a crucial part of the community, and Joyce Brown has since become the principal.
I have second generation in my class. I mean, and like I say to the parents when they come to the parent-teacher interviews, we can call me Joyce now, and they say, oh no, we can't, Mrs. Brown. I would say our school is the center of the community. The community supports us just great. I mean, we have a lot of support. When we need something done, it comes from the community.
Joyce Brown and other residents watched Pense change. Transportation became so efficient that there was no reason not to commute to the larger centers. Families who'd been in the area for generations started seeing new faces in town.
Pense became more of a bedroom community, and at first At first, there was some concern about that. Didn't really go down well with some of the longtime residents and even people like myself that didn't like to see the character of our town change.
New people came from the urban centers, often still keeping their jobs in the city.
But it's turned out to be a godsend. Those strangers that moved into town have become friends and neighbors, and they keep the church and the rink and the small businesses, the gas station and the little store and the school going, and they're active in all sorts of organizations and fundraising activities in the community, and it's just it's saved our community, frankly, and I don't think there are too many people that would have any concern about it anymore. We're just thankful that those people did move in.
While other communities have become ghost towns, the Village of Pense has maintained its numbers. New generations bring with them a wealth of new businesses, some traditional and others not so traditional.
I think it's very fortunate to keep the town going as we are when we're so close to Regina-Moose Jaw.
I actually suspect that Pense will grow some more. I really think it has such a great location, so close to the IMC Kalium potash mine and Sask-Furco, who are the two largest employers in the area by far. Only a few miles from there, Pense has pretty much a complete array of services.
I think that our attitudes and our involvement within the city or within the community will draw people who don't want to live in the city and create an opportunity where it's cost competitive, because that's always important to live here, and yet still enjoyable, true small town community spirit. So that's kind of where I think we have to focus our future.
Despite all the changes in the last few decades, Pense remains a safe place to raise a family.
The children, they don't have a fear to go with anybody else. They know everybody here, so I think that's special too.
I like the fact that I know pretty well everybody that comes to town. If you don't know them, if they stay here for a couple of years, you soon do.
It's maybe not a tight-knit family, but sure, it's like living with extended family all the way around you. Everybody's looking out for each other. People feel more responsible for each other in a small town, I feel.
The residents of Pense and area keep community groups active, including the Centennial Anniversary Committee, Lions Club, Judo Club, Seniors Club, and the Rink and Recreation Boards.
The community is still central, for whether you live on the farm or on Elder Street, doesn't matter.
As a senior group, we like to do things for the community. Seniors aren't always looked upon as the most popular people in the world, are they? But we always feel as if we're doing a community, doing good for the community.
Pense looks forward to annual events like the Fall Supper, School Awards Day, Karaoke Contest, and Community Cleanup Day.
The town has a long history of pulling together in working bees and making things happen for the town, and that's just a great thing to be part of. I'm really surprised how strong that whole attitude is here.
Like, I don't have a control over whether the school will always be there or not, but I feel that we have to make sure that we include our community, so we do have that support, so that the parents, community members do know that the school is there and continues to be the center. So if something ever does happen, that, you know, we will have that force behind us.
You know, 30 years ago, I guess if you asked me what Pense would look like today, I wouldn't have had a clue. But somehow I couldn't imagine it disappearing. I always thought there would be a Pense, and I think there always will be. Sure hope so.
It's nice to see that there's some young blood and that are so enthusiastic about celebrating our 100th anniversary.
Got letters and things like this from people that have lived here long ago, and they want to know more about the town, and they'd like to come back and that, and it's been, so they've still got feelings for the town too, that they'd like to come back to, so.
When the community comes together, everybody's accepted equally, and it's great. It's a great place to live.
I mean, it's home is what it is. I've never known anywhere else but here.
I think it is special, and that's kind of where my heart is, because it is special.
It's my favorite place in the world. It's home to me, and if anything ever drags me away from Pense, it'll still be home.